Good morning, everyone. I am Malaise from Victory Through Failure, and I am here to talk about Total War Warhammer. Today we're going to be going over a lot of the basic options that you'll see just when you're out kind of playing the game for the first time here in the campaign menu. So if you come up to the very top left, or if you hit escape, this will open your general menu options, where you have the option of resuming the game, saving, loading, options such as sound, graphics, things like that. Support will give you access to help if you're in need of such a thing, and buttons for exiting the game to the menu and exiting the game to Windows itself. Next to that, you have your chat, which will let you type things to people. As you can see, mine fills up with little tildes over and over and over because that is my push to talk button, which I'm used currently. Advisor, this person will pop out, and depending on the campaign that you're on, it will be a different person, and they give you messages that you can use to kind of continue on not only just the story, but options in the game as well. Over here in the corner, there's a little gear for settings, and you can choose if this is only going to be in audio, if they'll give you messages in text, or a little bit of both, and then a drop-down menu that will give a description of how much advisor you would like. Next to that, we have the help pages, and if you click on them, you'll see over here on the right hand side all of the different options that you can select for help if you so need. It also does make the map go away, but if that happens, you can just click this plus sign right here on the top right, and the map will come back. If you hit the minus sign, the map will go away. If we come back to the top left and we go to the spell browser, this is a little bit further than the scope of this video, but needless to say, it shows all of the different schools of magic in the game. And if you select a school of magic, it shows you all of the spells that that school can do, its effects and things like that, and then as well as the amount of winds of magic it will cost, which is similar to mana, and the time before it can be cast again. So again, a little bit further than the scope of this video, but a good way to kind of look through some of the effects and see what's possible. Next to that, we have camera settings, and so this is not necessarily what you might consider at first face value, but camera settings here on the campaign menu is going to refer to what the actual screen shows you when it's not your turn. So if we go over here to, let's say, Lords and Heroes, you can turn the camera on, or you can pick a specific type of camera. You can also pick an animation speed, and this is for Lothern, which is our self. So when I move my hero or my lord a distance across the map, it is going to record that, and the distance that it takes or the time that I have to watch, I can pick if I want them to watch normal speed, or if I would prefer them to just get instantaneously where I click. Next here we have the different races that are around in the world, and so by going through these different factions, you can select a faction and then again choose which view you'd like to view when that character type moves from that faction, and then the speed at which the character type from that faction moves. So a lot of versatility if you so desire. Here we have allied factions, and so we can choose to have the camera and animation speed modified based on people that are within our allied faction. And then enemy factions, and this is dynamic, so as you make diplomatic actions throughout the game and people come to your side and then leave, this camera actions will come and go depending on the choices you have made, as well as whether someone is on your ally or someone is your enemy. And then here at the end we have neutral, which again, same options, just for people who are neither your ally or your enemy yet. So up here at the top, we have the objective bar. It's going to be different depending on if you play in the Mortal Empire campaign, which combines Total War Warhammer 1 and Total War Warhammer 2, or if you're playing in Total War Warhammer 2 and you're doing the Vortex campaign, which is what this current video is portraying. So up here in the top left, this is one thing that will carry on to any campaign, and that's your treasury. This shows the current amount of money that your entire faction has the ability to field if needed right now, this second. So you can purchase things. Next to that, you can see a predicted income that you will receive at the beginning of the next turn. And it combines all of the positive effects and income and things like that that you have. And it also increases or adds in all of the negative things that you have, for such as army upkeep or any events that may happen, enemy raiding parties, things like that. So this is a basic quick glance at how you're doing economically. Or maybe not economically, financially, I guess would be a better way to look at it. And then next to that are going to be more custom. So for the High Elves, they have an aspect called Influence, which allows you to influence the court and do different effects within the campaign itself. However, this can change, and often will change, for every single faction. So if you're a Dark Elf, it's going to be different. If you're the Lizardman, it's going to be different. If you're the Beastman, it's going to be different. Next to that, we have the bar here, and this is going to only be present on the Vortex campaign. You can see here Hexoatl, I think I got that right, the Lizardman, then Nagaron, which is the Dark Elf, Green Clan Moors, which is the Skaven, and so we are also the High Elf. So if you play one of these other factions, then you would see the Lothern white and blue flag there. And so as you take places in the world, we'll get over the objectives later, as you take objectives in towns and cities and complete things, these bars will slowly fill up. At every circle, you will complete a ritual, or have the ability to complete a ritual, and when you get to the very end, you have the ability to do a final climactic battle and finish the campaign. So, moving over here to the far right, we have the missions and quests. So this will show you any current missions that have been issued, or any long-term things you need to work on. So it will show, a brief picture at the top. Underneath that, it will give you a brief description of what the quest is. We need to ensure that one of the following buildings gets constructed. So Lothern is our faction. We have to build an elven village somewhere within Lothern, which is this town right here. And what will this, it gives us a description where we can read a little bit about the story, as well as the option of clicking this. Notice how the cursor changes and a question mark appears. That will give us the option of clicking this and take us to the building help area if we need some more help with understanding how to do buildings. And then the reward that we will get if we complete all of the objectives, in this case 500 to our treasury of gold. So next to that tab, up in the events, we have events that have occurred in the previous event. So things that have happened leading up to where we currently are playing in our turn. And then when we end our turn, everyone else in the world will do their events, and then messages will pop up for us before our next turn, and then on our turn we'll stop. We'll be able to use and look at those messages if we so choose. So since this is going to be the first turn and there are no previous events, it just gives you a basic how-to of High Elves, and this is going to again be different for every faction. And then a mission has been issued as well. So here, if you notice, when you go to the third tab, Lords and Heroes, the map itself actually changes, and a yellow tab, or a yellow flag, which is a legendary lord, the leader of our faction, appears, as well as with a little bar showing the relative strength of his army. Now, one thing to keep in mind, and we'll go back over this in a future video, is that this is not the strength of the army in relation to other armies. It is simply a strength of the army in relation to how many slots are filled. So if you have one unit, the bar will look nearly empty, and if you have 20 units, the bar will be completely full. However, if there are 20 units of dragons or 20 units of goblins, the bar will look exactly the same. So don't be deceived into thinking that you have a more powerful army than someone simply because it is more full. There are a lot of other factors that will go into that, but that's an aside, and I don't want to get too taken afar from that. So down a little bit further under here, we've got the Lords and Hero tab where we can see all of our current Lords and Heroes. So if we click on Tyrion, which is our Lord here, it will select him. Don't focus too much on most of the little color changes and things like that, but for right now, this will zoom us into him, and it will also change a lot of the other options. We'll come back to that later. Next is going to be the provinces. So by selecting this tab, we can actually see that Lothern here is where we have our flag, but there are a lot of other places around that all have different flags, and so we want to be cognizant to that. We want to make sure that we're aware of where we're going and who is around us. So this provinces tab here is going to show us all of the known provinces in the world. Now again, this is only the Vortex campaign, so it's going to be smaller than the Mortal Empire. So if we click on these, we can go around the world and we can see the different places as well as the factions that hold them. Now it's also important to keep in mind that these are entire provinces, not cities. So when I click on the Straits of Lothern here, it actually gives me access to the city of Lothern, the Tower of Lycian, and the Glittering Tower, 3 different cities, all of which are contained within this area called the Straits of Lothern. So when you click on Calidor, for example, that's 3 separate places. Unicorn Gate is one in this case, unique. Griffin Gate, also unique. Southern, Urvesi has 3 separate areas, all of which are controlled by their own separate faction. So even this smaller map does have quite a bit of area to cover. So here on the second to last tab, we've got the known factions of the game, or at least of this small world, and they will all be listed here under their faction types. So you have High Elves, Dark Elves, Rogue Armies, and then we'll encounter more as we go around the world. If you hover over them, you have the option of left-clicking to go straight to their capital. Here shows a trade forecast. You have either a box with 2 arrows, meaning that you have the ability to trade with them, and when you mouse over this, it tells you what your projected income from this is. Or if you have a line through the icon, it simply says that you cannot trade with them because you don't have a way of communicating with them or of getting goods to your item, to you. Next here we have the relation tab. So this gives you a general understanding of whether or not you like each other as a faction and whether or not this is going in a positive or negative direction in the long term. And it gives you a list of all of the things that you've done that have a positive effect shown with green numbers, and all of the things that you have done that have a negative effect shown with red numbers. And as you can see here, because of the ability of aversion or innate racial hatred, I guess you could say, they have an aversion towards us, and so just because we're separate from them, they don't like us and we have a -30. So that doesn't mean we can't overcome that and become great allies and friends with them, but we do have a innate dislike of us, which is not the best, but hey, makes it interesting. Okay, so up here in the top right we have the last one, and this is the faction tab. So I didn't want to click that right away. If you mouse over this, it's going to tell you a brief summary of your faction and the pluses and minuses that you get by being that faction. Now, we will click on that really quickly so that it can show you here a faction summary. So it will tell you the capital of your city, how many provinces you own, how many settlements you own, the income you have, any factional effects that you may have, suitable climate. So this is going to be interesting. We'll come back to this because this does play a pretty important role in the long term in the game, but generally speaking, anywhere that you start right around you is going to be considered a suitable habitat. So again, we'll come back to that. So faction power here on the top right, we have the number of armies, the number of lords, heroes, the number of heroes that you have of each type. And then underneath that you have diplomacy. So you'll see the different faction you have under the different categories, whether they are military ally, which means that if either one of you, generally speaking, you can cross each other's lands, you can attack each other's enemies. It's about as close as you can get without simply merging together. Defensive allies means that you're very good friends, and if anyone gets attacked, you jump to each other's help. This is similar to the concept of NATO. At war, it's pretty simple. It means you're doing what people have done for thousands of years, and you're attempting to resolve your disputes by stabbing each other to death. And then trade partners, which will be listed here. So, close this. Again, we have the mini map here. So you can use the mouse wheel by zooming in and out to go to specific areas. You can also left click and drag to move it around. And then the minus sign and plus sign again, just to bring that back up again, will make the map either large or small. So if we move to the bottom of the screen here, we have our notifications. So this here is your objectives. If you click on details of your objectives, you can see here we have a vortex victory, which means you win the final battle and you get access to that by completing all the rituals. So if you can check both those boxes, your faction will win. However, there's also a secondary way of winning, which is you must destroy all of the following factions and then maintain control of 50 provinces, either by direct ownership or through vassals or military allies. So again, military allies is about as close as you can get without simply assimilating them into your society. Also, interestingly enough, you have the movie viewer over here, which will show you how you can watch some of the previous videos that you've unlocked during the campaign, and you get a new video at each one of these checked boxes and rituals that you complete. So next here we've got diplomacy, and this is yet again another concept that's way outside the scope of this video, but I will be making one very shortly on it. Over here on the left hand side you can see your faction, the right hand side you can see the, I don't want to say enemy, opposing, rival, complementary. It's the other people. The other faction will be directly across from you, and your how you receive them and how they receive you is completely dependent on your actions within the game, as well as inherent abilities and things they start the game with. So anyone, you can click on anyone in the entire world that you've experienced any access to within reason, and you have the ability then to have various diplomatic options with them. But again, far outside the scope of this, so we won't worry about it too much. But this screen is interesting because it allows you to see the world, see what you can see around you, also what's hidden, and then the factions that are going to be directly imposing their will upon you, or vice versa, depending on how competent you are at this. So we're going to go back to our previous screen, and let's see, the next option we have here is technology. So when you look at this, I don't want you to be overwhelmed. It's going to be different for every faction. So if you're a Lizardman or a Skaven or a High Elf, the screen will be different. Up here in the top left, you have the research rate, which shows you the rate in which you are researching. So right now, something that takes 5 turns, because we're at a research rate of 100%, would still take 5 turns. If you can get your research rate to 200%, it would be twice as fast. If it's down to 50%, then it would take twice as long. Next to that is your amount of money. In this case, as you can see, some of these items require gold to unlock, and so that's why your money is listed. So here you have purplish, lavender, I guess they're all slightly different color, lightly colored boxes, and these boxes are different branches that are labeled here of research. Now, in order to unlock one of these, you must have anything with an arrow before it, which is a prerequisite. So for example here, military advancements, that all the arrows lead to military advancements, pretty self-explanatory. And so if you were to unlock the military advancements here, it would give you access to any of the skills within this box. However, the skills on this second column would require that you have the first column done, since you can see an arrow leading from this one to this one. So if I got military advancements and then naval discipline, I would then be able to get appoint Sea Masters. One thing to note though is military advancements 2 and military advancements 1 are not connected to each other, at least not directly. And so in theory, you could simply go straight to military advancements 2. The reason that you can't is this second item here, this little red building. And this shows that you need to have a specific building. And for military advancements 1, it's a rallying field, and for military advancements 2, it's an archive. This is important to note, that if you want to have a specific type of research done, then you will probably want to try to work your way towards building that specific building. Okay, next here we have our rights. So these are going to be faction specific again. So if these look different when you play a different faction like Dark Elves, don't panic, that's normal. So here we have the name of each of the rights. Underneath that, in the left, we have the cost. This is the amount of money it will cost. Some other factions have other things like slave costs or warpstone or any number of other items that you might need to do in addition to the cost in gold. Next to that, you have the cooldown. So this is a timer in turns that shows you how long it can be before you do this again. So if you do it once, you're going to have to wait 20 turns before you can do the invocation of Hoeth again. Here shows how long it lasts. 5 turns, you get all of these effects. I won't go too much into the effects themselves again because they build upon the premise that you understand what all of the effects are giving you bonuses to, and I haven't gone over what all of those are yet. So again, these are just effects that will give you positive things going forward, will be different for each faction. Next, we have Intrigue at the Court. So Intrigue here at the Court this is going to be a faction related thing. So this is going to be different for each faction. Both of these green circles down here will be different depending on who you're currently playing as. And so this will give you the option of selecting your faction and then a opposing faction, and then using the influence that you have earned throughout the game to either improve or decrease your relations. So kind of an interesting concept. Again, a little bit outside the scope of what we're going to handle today. And then the Sword of Cain. So this is going to only be an effect for you if you're playing on this campaign here with the Vortex. If you are, then the Sword of Cain, which if you click on this orange tab will show you where it is a immensely powerful artifact of dark power and just slaughter and death and horrible things that you can use, and it's very, very powerful, very effective, but it corrupts you and makes terrible things happen to your entire faction that continue to build over time until basically the entire world hates you. But by then you might be powerful enough to kill them, so to each his own. Alright, underneath that we have the end turn. So this giant circle here ends your turn.
Tyrion, heir of an area.
There, so the end turn. So if I click this, it would end my turn and I would give control of the game over to the next faction to then continue their turn. Next to that, you have a skip current notification tab. So notifications here are shown by a gear with a exclamation point, and they will give you the option of turning on and off notifications depending on what your likes and dislikes are. Now these notifications are going to be shown to you at the start of your turn before you get the ability to end your turn. So if you have things that need to be addressed, you must either skip them or address them before you end your turn, and these notifications are a way to kind of make sure that you don't skip your turn incidentally or on accident, I should say, especially later on when you get to some of the higher turn counts where there's a lot of things going on. So here is the current turn number, and you can see we're on turn number 1, and I think, except no. Okay, so down here in the bottom center of the screen, this is going to be differing depending on if you have buildings or if you select an army. Now, this is, again, I'm going to have to make a video on this because this can get pretty complicated and it's race specific, but just for general idea, you can see here in the top left the army upkeep. This is the current cost in gold every turn that you must pay for the soldiers, equipment, and other things in this army. Down here at the bottom there's a flag with a plus sign which allows you to recruit units. Sometimes you have the ability of recruiting very special units called units of renown, and those will be in a box next to this one, and they will be again unique and special, but you can only have a certain number of them. Here you will see the ability to have recruitment options. There's a question mark if you need help, an X to close the tab. Also underneath that there are 2 tabs, global and local. Global will allow you to recruit from any building in your entire faction. Local will allow you to build from the current province that you are within. Big difference here in cost. So if you have to recruit globally, the units will take longer and cost more. However, if you can recruit locally, you'll get your better deals. Some buildings and towns have different bonuses to recruitment, and so it can be very strategic sometimes to try to build certain buildings, especially long-term in certain areas of the world. So if we click on a building or a town or a village or a settlement, I guess, you could see that the bottom middle here changes. In the top left, we've got a feather, which allows us to rename our settlement. We also have the ability to click on the Straits of Lothern, which will center the screen on this actual province. If we click on any of the names of these smaller areas, it will center the screen and take us to those areas. Now, one interesting thing to note is if you select own all of the areas within a certain province, it's similar to Monopoly in that you get a bonus for controlling all of the land of a certain color or a certain type. So if you control all of these lands, or all three of these, the Tower of Lycian, the Glittering Tower, and Lothern, you get the ability to unlock a special provincial buff that gives everyone and every army within those provinces, all three of these areas, those effects. So it can be very effective. So I will go over in the future a building how-to, but for right now we'll just go over quickly. At the bottom here, an overview. This shows you the buildings that you have. Next to that is a garrison tab. This shows you a quick look at the number of units and of which type are currently residing within your town to protect it if attacked and you are not there. If you do have an army nearby to help protect it, then your army will be added to the garrison and they will show up as reinforcements. Next to that is the building browser, which you can usually click, but for some reason, I have to select my own building. The building browser here will pop up a new tab, which again looks extremely overwhelming. I will go over this sometime in the future. Don't worry about it too much, but this is where you will be able to build and upgrade your buildings. The recruit lord option gives you the option of recruiting lords. They have a picture, a name. Sometimes they have positive effects, sometimes they have negative effects, and the better lords, at least for high elves, come with using your special influence that you've earned. It also shows you the cost for them initially, as well as the upkeep that you'll have to pay every turn for getting them. And then also heroes here. And so heroes are unique, and I'm going to make a specific video on them, but for right now they are smaller leaders that you can do very specific things, or you can put them into your own army. So one last little area here on the bottom left, if you select a town, you'll be able to see growth. We'll go over this again in the future, but growth is how quickly your town will advance to the next settlement strength, which allows you to upgrade the buildings and within it. Underneath that is the tax province. You have the ability to either turn off taxes, which makes everyone happier, or turn on taxes, which makes everyone more unhappy, but you make money. And so this is going to be another strategic thing you're going to have to worry about. Underneath that, we have corruption. We'll go over that, and then provincial effects that happen within this province. If you select a hero instead, then in the bottom left here you have a circle describing the or showing the hero's portrait. You have stances, which we'll go over in a future video. Character details, which you can then select to go from the character screen, which is a combination of a character screen and inventory, and skills, which is like a research tree or a talent tree for your hero. And then underneath that is the level. Here we can see our hero is level 1, and this will slowly fill up as we level up. And then this yellow bar is our movement range. So we start out each turn with a full bar, and then as you move around it slowly drops down towards 0. When it is at 0, that army and hero or lord is no longer able to move for that turn. So this is a brief kind of run through just of how to get an idea how to use the basic interface in the campaign. And I would like to thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you on the next video. Thanks again, and have a great day.